In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can make a knotted leaf bracelet using a waxed linen thread to create a bracelet like this. What you will need for this tutorial are some Nunn Design findings. You will also need some waxed linen thread. For this one, I'm going to actually use the brown, and you'll need a pair of scissors, 2 pairs of needle nose pliers. I also have a ruler handy. So the first step is you're going to want to have 2 9-inch strips of the waxed linen thread. So waxed linen thread, these aren't all created equal, as I've learned, even from this is the black, and you can see that the black is quite a bit thicker than the brown. Let's show you here. So in one bracelet, I did one in black and one I did in brown, and from bracelet to bracelet, they're quite different. My understanding is there's 12 strands of linen thread. Each strand is covered with wax, and then all 12 strands are put together and covered with wax. So they vary, and you can see that they vary slightly from batch to batch, but this still works great for the Nunn Design beads. So you'll need 2 strips of 9 inches of this wax linen thread. This is actually too much. 9 inches is actually too much, but you will get more and more savvy with exactly how much you need, but for tying all of the knots and such, I find that 9 inches each is just easiest for me to manage it. Sometimes speed is worth those extra. I think we have like 2 or 3 inches of excess waste, but it's just easier to tie knots and such. Alright, so for the first part of this bracelet, we're going to do this end first. We're going to start by threading the wax linen thread through the leaf and then tying a series of knots, and then coming to the end over here where the lobster clasp is. We're going to start with, let's see, I did it so the leaf is facing this way. It doesn't really matter, but let's just make it the same. You're going to go ahead and make a nice nib or a nice point for yourself, and then thread it through the hole onto this, and then you're going to have 3 inches. This is what I found is the easiest for tying all these knots. So the distance on this loose end you want to be 3 inches. So I have 3 inches there. Now I'm going to go ahead and tie a double overhand knot with this. So there's my loop, and then I'm going to come through with both of these ends, pull through, and I'm bringing my knot, I want it right next to where my leaf is. So now I have a nice overhand knot right at that base. I'll show you here. Then with this excess bit, I'm going to thread on one of the Nunn Design organic beads. And these beads are cast lead-free pewter and then plated with 24 karat gold. And they have a nice wide hole, so they're ideal for working with the wax linen thread. I'm making another overhand knot, so I'm keeping my knot right towards that bead. I'm pulling with this finger and then pushing with these fingers that knot right towards the end of the bead. And then with my scissors, I'll go ahead and trim that excess. Then on this next strand, I'm going to put on 4 of the organic beads. So you can build out any combination of beads that you want. All of these findings are on our website. So I have 4 organic beads. I'm going to tie another overhand knot. So you could pull it's over, and then this threads up and through. I'm keeping it pinched over here so that when I go to pull on this, this knot is coming as close to that bead as I can get it. And I actually have found that it's super nice to have like an extra bead on the handy, because then I can just thread this on. Get your nice point here. And I can kind of pull that down, and it's a lot gentler on my thumb. So once you have that all done, we are going to do this next part where we're going to have a little bit, an inch of distance before we tie on the lobster clasp and the jump ring. So I'm going to use 2 pairs of my needle nose pliers to attach the lobster clasp onto that jump ring. So holding it at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, I'm going to open up the jump ring and place on my lobster clasp, and then close that back up. You move it back and forth until you have a nice flush. Now from here to here, we're going to have it be 1 inch. And the reason being for this is that I am going for the total length of this bracelet to be 7.5 inches. So in order for this to be 7.5 inches, this needs to be a 1 inch, taking in consideration the length of this jump ring and the lobster clasp. So from here, I know that from the center of this is what I based it off of, but from here to here I need 1 inch. So I'm going to have 1 inch, and then I'm going to thread on my jump ring and lobster clasp, and I actually like to have that lobster clasp facing down, the opening part facing down. So I'm going to thread it on this way so the lobster clasp is threading down. And now I'm going to tie 2 knots. I mean, it would be nice if I could do a nice handy dandy knot like this up here, but it's really hard for you to tie it. And so anyway, we're just going to do a simple knot. So I know that's at that 1 inch mark. I believe this is called an overhand knot. So I'm coming in one direction and tying that knot, and coming back, tying this way. You can see how we're doing here. That should be about 1 inch in length. Yep. Alright, so once you have that, you're going to tighten that down. And then for the end of this particular bracelet, make that tip nice and together. You're going to thread on the 4mm faceted bead. And then we're going to tie another simple overhand knot. And bring that knot right up to the end of that bead. And then you can trim away your excess. So for the second part, doing the other part of this, we're going to add on a couple of jump rings. Then we're going to have some of the wax linen thread, and then have a connector and some more jump rings. So the first step of this is we're going to add on a couple of jump rings onto this end. So using two pairs of needle nose pliers, go ahead and open up your jump ring, place it onto the end, and hold this at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. And bring that jump ring together so it's nice and flush. And thread your next one on, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. Shut that, nice and flush. And now we're ready for that second 9-inch length of the wax linen thread. So go ahead and double this up. You're going to thread this through the top part of that jump ring and then through here. So just like such, so you have a nice little loop there. Now from this distance to this distance, this should be 1.5 inches before we start attaching on the connector and the jump rings. So I'm going to measure out like 1.5 inches to kind of give myself an idea of where that's going to be. And you can even take like I have a little Sharpie marker. You can like just kind of make a little mark on it so you can see where that 1.5 inches is. Again, this is on because you're wanting to make the full distance to be 7.5 inches. So a couple more jump rings and connectors to go. So this little guy is the hardest part of this whole bracelet. I've had a lot of customers say that they just can't seem to get this, and it just does take practice. So even I sometimes have some challenges with using these leather connectors. So let me do the very best I can at showing you how this is done. So I like to hold these in place with this one pair of needle nose pliers like such. I'm going to transfer it into my other hand so I can use my needle nose pliers with my right hand. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to bend down this one side. I'm just using the flat part of the needle nose pliers to crimp down this edge. So, flat part of needle nose pliers, crimping down this edge till that's nice and flat down inside of there. And then turn this around. Now I'm going to crimp down the other side using that flat edge of the needle nose pliers. Make sure your cord is tucked up in there, so that's the whole purpose of this, and that the cord is even. See what I mean? So it's nice and straight. And then use that flat part and just crimp that down into position there. Now with your excess cord, just take your scissors. You're going to trim right next to that end there. Now we're going to finish this off by adding, you can go in there and trim that a little tighter if you want, but we're going to finish this off by adding another jump ring, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. I know those pliers are getting old. It's harder and harder to use these. Close that one back up. So it's nice and flush. And we're ready for our final jump ring. Alright, so the total length of this bracelet should be 7.5 inches. Let's see. That is a standard bracelet size, is 7.5 inches. So from that end to that end, you're right on 7.5 inches. So that's why it was important that this be 1 inch and this be that 1.5 inch before you attach. So I've taken into consideration these two ends and how much space they take. I've also created ones. This one I created with actual leather, and I made this one 7 inches because my wrist is a lot smaller. So you can, you know, make variations and adjust the distance on this one. I made this end a little bit, it's 1/2 inch smaller so that I could have it be 7 inches. So then you could also make them 9 inches or 8 inches or whatever size you want. So you do your adjustments down here. So hopefully you enjoyed this. This is Becky Nunn showing you how you can make a leaf wrapped bracelet using wax linen thread and the Nunn Design findings. Thanks for joining me.